So in this segment of In the Library with Marcia and Adrian, I would like to thank a special guest that's joining me today, and your name is?
Kelly Lee Mystery.
And I want you to tell me, I know a little bit about you, Kelly, but I wanted you to go ahead and share your story, your history. Who is Kelly Lee Mystery?
I always say words can't describe me because I've lived a life. We're 10 in one.
I love that.
So, yeah, I grew up in the country and had horses. So when I got married, I ran a horse farm and I taught yoga on horseback. I got into yoga. After my divorce, I moved to Mexico and did a lot of holistic training with shaman and taught meditation and yoga and Pilates. And then I came back and went to energy healing school. So I was working as an energy healer as well as yoga. And going upstairs in the yoga studio downtown, Kim Cyril's place, there was a publisher downstairs and I'd see his door every day. So I went in and I said, I've always been interested in writing a book. And he's like, well, why don't you? And I said, I don't know. He's like, what do you want to write about? I said, I have no idea. But at that time, I had noticed I travel a lot and there was so much homelessness and they were treated worse than stray animals. Like people will take care of animals, but they'll just be very disgusted at homeless people. So I told him, well, I'd like to do something with homelessness. And he's like, well, go do it. So I decided to just travel around the US because I like traveling, take pictures of people and tell their stories. So I had to get releases for the photo and the stories for everybody in the book. And I also went to shelters and found people who had come off the street. And that's how the book got written. So that's how it led up to that. After that, I met Pastor Boone at her homeless shelter, and there was a lot of divine intervention. I got a phone call that said I had registered for college at Grand Canyon College in Phoenix for counseling. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I literally didn't. And the lady talked to me for 2 hours. Her name was Sandra Felix, and she talked me into going to school on a probationary period because of my grade point from high school. So I was like, okay. So I did my undergrad. I hated every minute of it, but I'm like, it seems to be my path because once I started doing that, everything fell into place. All the other stuff I did, the holistic stuff, I think it was training me for what I'm doing now. So when I got done with that, I needed a master's to actually become a counselor. And I was in Phoenix and a friend came out and he was depressed and he wanted to go to a psychic. And I'm like, I don't want to. I'm just having fun celebrating my graduation. He's like, oh, come on, I don't want to go alone. So I went to see this man named EA. And I'm like, I don't want a reading really. I'm just doing it to help my friend. Not that I'm against readings. I just didn't want one that day. So we're going upstairs and I start to feel dizzy. And he said, you need to make a decision. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you need to decide if you're going to grad school or you're going to get in the van and travel around. And I was like, how does he know that? Like he had a connection. I'm like, darn you. That gives me
goosebumps, right? You're like, oh goodness, you're sold. It was the day for a reading.
Feeling dizzy. And I'm like, why am I feeling dizzy and sick? And he said, I'm grounding you because you're just out there. You're everywhere. But he said, God told us, or God's law or something like that is that we are put on earth to help as many people as possible. Now you could go around in your van and you could do energy healing and you're going to help some people, right? But what if you get your credentials? Not that you need them, but people need to know you have credentials to come to you for help. How many more people will you help? And I was just like, darn you.
Yeah,
now I got to go to grad school.
You're like, I barely got through my undergrad and here we go. Yes.
4 years, because it's a 3.5-year program.
Sure, yes.
It took me 4 years, but he said, now you need to decide where to go. And he knew about Eastern for some reason. The other school I was thinking about was, I think Southwestern down in Santa Fe.
Okay.
I can't remember the name, but those were the only two that really had the accreditation I needed. So he helped me choose Eastern because it's near my family. So I had lived in Mexico. I think I said that.
Yeah.
I came back here and now I'm kind of stuck here. Why did you come back to Monroe? And I'm like, I don't know. This is where I feel like I'm going to help the most people.
Yeah.
So I met Pastor Boone through that. We became really good friends and I started doing stuff with the homeless. In grad school, everything got put to the side. I opened my own counseling practice now. and actually Betsy
Yes.
Levens, because I'm doing art with her. She's like
Right.
my biggest fan.
I know.
Um,
She's the reason
she's
you're here
the-
today.
yes,
She's the
reason
one
I'm
who
here today.
introduced me to you. Yes. She's been
she's-
on a podcast too. Thank you, Betsy. Shout out to
Oh,
Betsy.
yeah. So she's really been helpful in being a catalyst to get me back doing the things that I really enjoy doing. I love writing. I love talking about the book. I like doing book signings and bringing awareness to the homeless problem. Because I always say humans have lost their humanity.
Yes.
And with this book, I hope to give back that humanity to being human, because we can treat a stray animal really well, but we can't treat a human well.
Yeah.
And they all have stories. And in this book, people are like, I don't want to buy your book. It's really depressing. I'm like, no, it's not depressing. If you read it, you are
It's
going to
not. It's
laugh. and laugh.
yeah, it's uplifting. I mean, it's very, I love that you put names and stories with faces. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
Even when we talked a little bit about your photos, which are beautiful. They're in the book.
Mhm.
They're here on display at the Ellis Library and Reference Center currently. Even when you were hanging them, you were
Mhm.
getting emotional and remembering their
It
stories.
was. I
Yeah.
would look at each one and the story would come back. And I have to give a shout out to my friend Fern Smith. She did a lot of the photography in Detroit. She
Okay.
didn't travel with me,
Sure.
but the cover photo
Yes.
was in Detroit,
Okay.
and she took that with her iPhone.
Well,
Because we
anymore,
didn't-
I feel
yeah,
like
we
it.
didn't
Yes.
have the camera with us that day.
Okay. Well, I know you
yeah.
mentioned, Detroit and also California. I know you've kind of traveled all over, and there's
Right.
different people from all walks of life in here.
Mhm.
And I think I've always said that same line that I say that about. I've always said children, but homeless too, where I said people treat their animals better than their children, or
Yeah.
in this case, homeless,
Yeah.
because I feel like the same thing. Why would you not treat a human that way?
And-
So I love this.
I always feel like Michael the Archangel,
Oh yeah.
because injustice makes me furious. And I know he's the angel that loses his temper.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not good, but I just
Right.
don't like injustice. And so I'll step in. And so a lot of these people, like the one Shay, he's in
Yeah.
Detroit in Greektown. I interviewed him at the church there. They were on the church steps, which is now got a fence around it, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But a church should be a
I
sanctuary for
know.
everyone.
I've said that my whole,
And-
like, I grew up with all of churches around me, like being
Mhm.
unlocked and open and anyone could go. But now, because people
No.
have abused that and have robbed
Mhm.
or, vandalized churches, now they all need to stay locked. And I'm with you, where that used to be the one place where you could go anytime,
Yeah.
and now society has made it not so.
Right. And so Shay, he told a crazy story if you read the book. I just write whatever they told
Yeah, I
me.
love
So
that. I know, I
I'm
love it.
gonna
I
edit-
love it. Yeah.
He
No.
wrote a story about making maps at the Harry Potter school, and he carried a broken computer around, and that's how he went to school online. And none of it was true, but he
I love
thought,
that. I love the
I
imagination
know,
too.
he thought Fern was his mother. He'd say, Mama, Mama. And he was like probably in his late 30s, but very
Aw.
mentally ill. And all he wanted in return was to have a hamburger, fries, and a Coke at the diner in Greektown, but they won't let them in. So I went in and I talked to I think he was the owner, but manager. I said, listen, I'm interviewing people for this homelessness book, and he really wants to have a burger, fries, and a Coke, and he wants to be waited on. I'll just pay ahead. And please let him sit down. And they did. And he was at the table with his little napkin and his fork and knife, and the waitress was there when I left, and he just waved, and it was so cute. Like, it just touches your heart.
It does. And I understand both sides to that too, right? Like, you
Mhm.
don't want to turn anyone away. And again, the library is a public building, a public place where we welcome all. And I do understand with an establishment like that, money is changing hands. So I love that you took that initiative and made that dream come true for him,
Yeah.
too.
And one thing I realized, because I went to, I didn't go like to the east as much. We went to Schenectady with Pastor Boone to see actually they have an oak tree also in the same
Oh.
verse from Isaiah as their motto, like Pastor Boone did.
Yeah.
But it was an outreach center. So they started with one building, and it was to house the Detroit Edison people who came 100 years ago to work away from their families and became alcoholics. And it was in a really bad area. There were crack houses all around them and drug houses. And they bought the one building, and they've expanded now to 5 blocks. They
Okay.
have schools, they have daycare with security, they have transitional housing, gardens, a bakery where they help mentally handicapped.
Oh.
dry cleaning services, driving services, nursing services, like they have
How wonderful.
everything.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And you can go to the bakery and eat, like a public place. It's huge. It's better than Panera, I have to say. But that was like something we really wanted to do. And we talked to them. And then Pastor Boone did her Miracle on Second Street promotion. I know we did a concert at the River Raisin Arts Center
Oh, yeah.
and raised money. And, you know, the city fought her so hard about, they didn't want her to bring homeless in here, but the homeless are here.
Right,
She's just trying to give them a
right.
hand up
Right.
so they can come back into society.
Yes. Yes.
And they said, okay, if you get 350,000, and they gave her like April 19th to August 19th or something like that to raise the money. She raised 400 and some $1,000 by donations. People were bringing piggy banks in and everything else. And so we started the outreach center here based on the Schenectady model in this
Okay.
book.
Yeah.
And although there has been snafus, you know,
Sure.
she's
Sure.
had
Yeah.
issues and she had to leave, but she did hire someone to carry on, and she did a lot here.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have a free medical clinic,
Life-changing,
the free
life-changing.
Montessori school.
Yeah.
clothing
Grocery, the
closet,
oil
food
changes,
closet,
like, I
yeah.
mean, everything. There's some people don't even know
No,
half of it.
And I think they were opening an ice cream coffee shop. That was like her dream. And I don't know if that opened
Well,
yet or not.
they did have the ice cream plate parlor in the grocery store,
grocery
but
store,
I know
yeah,
that was always, she always wanted to.
She paired with Meyer. And interestingly, I don't know if this is in my book, but in Ohio, in Toledo, I worked for the Toledo City Paper for a while. And they, ProMedica, the man who runs ProMedica or owns ProMedica, he bought some property there and he built a grocery store near the homeless area, especially this park they hang out in. So they had food that was cheaper, and all proceeds were going to like help the homeless. And then upstairs they had a computer lab and training for anybody that wanted to try to get their
Right.
GED or a job. So ProMedica, which you don't think of them as being
Mhm.
helpful, but they really were.
Sure.
And they would donate to the homeless shelter all the time.
Yeah.
Like cases and cases of hats in the winter and gloves and things. So
Well, and it is the little things that you take for granted too. I mean, obviously homelessness is tragic. I mean, you're
Mhm.
unhomed and there's all these other things, but even just to sit down and enjoy a burger in a restaurant, you know, the things we take for granted, or, you know,
Yeah.
or an ice cream in an ice cream shop, you know, like it's those little things, those little joys
Right.
that we, you know, you're deprived of everything, not just, I mean, the big things and the little things. So it's
Mhm.
really a great reality check. My favorite thing about this book was how happy how happy and funny they were. Like you said, they told the stories and even the acknowledgments that, you know, this is a happy person. And
Yeah.
I just really enjoy
He
getting to put the
was.
faces and names together.
We went to the library in
Yeah.
California. We were in LA.
Because he was from Toledo, Ohio originally too. Yes. A small world, right?
He was so intelligent and so like connected to all the spiritual stuff. And we were
Yeah.
talking for like an hour, and then he said something and I said, "Are you bipolar with psychosis?" And he's like, "I am."
You're like, that makes
I went
sense.
to school for that, and it took me an hour to figure
Right.
it out.
You're like, what's happening?
But when we left, he's like, "I want a pack of cigarettes. They're like $10." I'm like, "I don't want to contribute to your smoking habit," but I was a smoker, so I did get them. And he pinched me on the bottom, and I'm like, "Hey, dude."
Yeah.
I mean, it was so funny.
Yes,
He's
right,
like,
just
"Well,
the
I thought I'd
interactions.
try."
Yeah. Can't blame a guy for trying. But yeah, I just thought too, what a small world, right? That he was started in Toledo and it
Yeah.
had brought him there. And then that you had interviewed him in a library too
Yeah,
as
in
well.
the library.
Yeah, I just I really love, so I don't think we've even mentioned the name yet, although we'll probably put it in the thumbnail too. But
Okay.
Forgotten Souls, if you want to talk a little bit about the book too as
Mhm.
well. You can get the book from the library. It is
Yeah.
available through the library. And I know you have more than one book, but this is the book that we
Right.
have the photos on display at the library currently.
Correct.
And
And I'm very excited that the book is here in the library.
yes.
I didn't really know that was an option until I met you.
Yes,
So,
yes, nope, yep,
yeah.
this is, so you can obviously purchase a copy of the book, but if you
Mhm.
don't have the means, you can always request it and check it out at the
Yeah.
library as well.
Something odd's going on with Amazon, because you could get my book on
Yeah.
Amazon, but now it's like $98 on there, and
Well,
apparently their
I found that out
distributor
with your
went out
other
of-
one. I think My
Yeah.
Gypsy Soul. We were trying to get all of them at the library and we struggled. I was gonna say, I guess we don't have to record this, but I was gonna ask you about that. So
Yeah, so I can talk about that later,
Sure.
but the publisher, I went to a hybrid publisher for Forgotten Souls. He did a really nice trailer on YouTube.
And hopefully we'll drop that link in here as
Yeah.
well. I don't want to forget
It's
to add
on
that.
YouTube. I don't
Okay.
know the link of.
Sure.
I know it's my website, but I'm sorry. I
Well, we
haven't
can maybe
used
put the
this in a
link to your
while.
website in
Yeah.
there.
If my website's still up and running.
It is. I looked at it. It is there.
Because grad school,
Sure.
I checked out for
Took a back
long
seat, right,
time
as happens.
in grad school, and I'm just getting back into it. But yeah, the book, I love this book. It was like a labor of love. It took over 4 years of my life. And one thing that I wanted to really mention about the book, it's another story, but I went to Chicago and there's on Wicker, I think it's Wicker and I can't remember the cross street.
Oh, okay,
There's
yeah.
tons of homeless,
Mhm.
supposedly a little dangerous, but I went there in the pouring rain on my way home from out west and I'm looking for homeless. I can't find anyone. One person's sleeping under a tarp in the park and I'm like, I don't want to wake them up. So I went into this little like housing complex. It was fancy, like a
Mhm.
fancy little, dare I say, yuppies. It was like for
Sure,
yuppies,
sure.
you know, young
Yeah.
upcoming like people, and they were there getting coffee at Starbucks, and there was a bench, and I sat down and I looked up and I saw a guy smoking under the awning on these stairs that went up to the Miracle Mile, I think Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
I went up and I said to him, like, I have been searching for homeless for like an hour. I'm writing a book. Can you help me? He's like, well, you just found one.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he told me a story.
Also meant to be, right?
He
That
was
you-
a
that's-
broker and a trader, and he got into cocaine, living that fast life, you know,
Sure.
tons of money. And then he ends up in rehab, but he only goes to rehab for winter housing. So he doesn't really want to get better, but he was a funny guy. And he's like, go try, I forget where he sent me. So I'm walking to go to another place. And I'm vegetarian and I saw a bar that said, it was an Irish bar, it said vegan tacos. I'm
Oh.
like, well, this is interesting. So I went in there to have lunch and I told the bartender what I was doing. I'm like, I'm really struggling to find homeless. She's like, normally they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And she said, well, you know, my friend actually was homeless for many years, heroin addict in a gang. She was in a biker gang. Then she was in the Latin Lords in
Oh,
Chicago, a
okay,
really
yeah.
bad gang, I guess. And she got clean, and after she went to prison, and now she's a violence interrupter for the college. And so she helps people come out of prison and get back on this, you know, into their life. And she really does a lot. She said you should interview her. So she gave me the number. I called her. Her name's Angelina. Bianca is her last name, which some people call her Bianca,
Right.
some Angelina.
A woman with two first
Yeah.
names.
So I contacted her. She told the story. We became friends. She actually came here for my book opening, and oddly enough, had to break up a fight between teenagers that happened in the middle of Public House where we were
Oh,
having the dinner to
yeah.
launch my
Oh,
book.
goodness.
Some teenagers came running in, knocked over stools, jumped over the table, and were fighting. And she had them like separated and talked to and gone before the police arrived.
See, and again, look at her, what her experience
I
and look at
know,
the
like
tools and the
she-
gifts that she has from that brokenness, you know,
And so her story's in my book, but she also wrote her own book called In Deep,
okay.
and it's available on Audible as
Okay.
well.
I can look and see if we can
hard
add it to the
copy.
library system as well.
Yeah,
So
it's an amazing story. You love her story.
Yeah.
She was a hooker that hated being a hooker out in Vegas.
I can't
Like she just had this incredible story. And
Yeah.
I felt like I was led to her again. It was like
right.
when you
And in
follow-
Chicago, I mean, you know, like
Yeah.
all over the world. Sure.
when you follow the intuition we're given, I think, and we do what our purpose is, it sends us where we need
Yes,
to be. But
yes.
when we
And when
find
you're
that
really
things-
looking, right? When we're
doors
really
shut,
looking and
yeah.
we're open to that. You know, when
Right.
our eyes are open and we're really looking, you know, the places, you know, that you were asking, those coincidences of you
Yeah.
meeting those people. I mean, what a great testimony. What a great story. I
Yeah.
love that.
So yeah, the book it's not boring.
Yeah, every story is
Isn't it?
different and
Every
very fun
story's
and
very
very
different.
funny. I really do I love the quotes. I love the funny
Mhm.
things that they say in there. It's just it's very
Yeah.
funny. Like it's very catching.
Even I don't know if I put the bodyguard Carl Lee in there, but he was my
He wasn't
second
from Detroit,
interview.
was he?
Yeah.
Oh, he was from Detroit. Okay.
He looked like the guy from the Green Mile.
Oh
Huge,
yeah,
big
yeah,
fan.
yeah.
He said, I've been watching you, you naive little white farm girl. He said, "You're gonna get yourself killed out here on these streets in Detroit." He's like, "What is wrong with you?" He's like, "You need a bodyguard. I'll tell you what, you buy me food, I'll be your bodyguard."
So you bought yourself a bodyguard.
So I interviewed him, but I'd go pick him up, and he had just gotten Section 8 housing.
Okay.
And he was a crack addict. And I think he was still using, because around 3 p.m. he'd start jonesing like, I gotta go, gotta go.
Yeah,
home,
like
gotta
that
go home,
was.
like we'd pick him up
Sure.
at 9, my friend Fern and I. Well, we saw some really cool graffiti on our way downtown. And it was on Woodward, and I don't know, it was not a nice area, but I just don't have fear in me. So I stop the car, I leave it running, I grab my camera, my purse is in the car. It's a new Jeep Compass. I run out, and Fern and I are taking pictures in front of the graffiti. I get back in the car, and he's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You left a known crack addict in your car
With your
with your
purse."
keys, with your purse." He said, "And I really thought about stealing your car." He said, "But in the long run, I'll get farther by protecting
Right,
you."
right.
He's
We
like-
made a deal.
He's like,
He's
"So
a man of his word.
I'm like, "Well, thank you for being so
Thanks
honorable."
for that
Like,
lesson.
yeah.
Yes.
And he's like, "I don't ever want you to do that again." Like,
Oh,
it was really
sure.
funny. And I know Fern invited him for a barbecue down here, but then we just parted
Yeah,
ways and
yeah.
never had it. And I remember him texting me once and being like, "Hey, when's that barbecue?" I'm like, "I'm so sorry." He was so disappointed.
Right.
But life just took us in different directions.
Yeah,
So
the simple pleasures, right?
yeah,
You know,
it
like
wasn't meant to be, but
yeah,
but yeah, I really did enjoy, and I there's a homeless guy. Well, he's not homeless now. He started a tree service here,
oh, okay.
but I hired him to paint my garage. Like, I would actually help people
Sure.
here too.
Of course.
But yeah, I'll
And you have
never-
and you do.
I even went to Canada. Fern and I went to
Okay.
Canada, but we couldn't. They take care of their homeless so
Right,
well,
yeah.
and we really couldn't get anything to write in the book. So
Right.
yeah, same in like Italy. I wrote to
Mhm.
friends in other countries, and most other countries don't have the homeless
Mhm.
problem we have.
Right.
They might have like the hobos, which are the train
Sure.
jumpers, and I have a whole section on that. I loved the train jumpers.
And their whole stories of
We
their
went-
life of
yeah.
adventure,
Oh,
really,
yeah.
and how they see the world.
One of
I
them
mean,
drank his drink with his pinky up, and I'm like, "What is with you drinking your wine like that?" He's like, "Oh, my dad's a general in the army, and we traveled all over, and I've been raised, they
Proper.
need money."
right.
And he's like, "But I just wanted to be free, so I started
Yeah.
jumping trains for a while, and we went dumpster diving." I didn't eat the pizza. I have to say,
You
I
did
do.
lie.
I did. I'm
Look,
like,
there was a lie.
I don't really want to eat food out of the dumpster because
Right.
I have to. But
Right. Although I will say, I feel like at a lot of high-end restaurants or grocery stores, I mean, I can
Mhm.
imagine that the food in dumpsters is probably
Well,
really
yeah.
amazing in a
And
lot of
this
places.
is another thing I want to address, because mental illness, first and foremost, is a huge issue. We need to change the way we handle mental illness in this country. And it started with Reagan, and I won't go into it
Sure.
here, but you can look it up. You
Yeah,
can look
yeah.
up the Reagan years when he was governor and president. He released everyone, and this was the biggest problem in California. And then we
Mhm.
have all our other states shipping people to California.
Right, right.
So we have that. So we have the drugs, the mental illness, and oh my God, I just forgot what I was talking about.
Oh, well, when you were talking about how that's the big, like you said, that's the biggest problem here because they, the mental illness.
Oh, yeah, but in other countries, they take
Oh, yeah.
care of their homeless. I really had an important point.
I'm so
It'll come
sorry.
back
Well,
to me, but it
we'll
went
circle
over- yeah.
back. The train jumpers, yeah, we can circle back to that. But I do know,
Mhm.
I mean, I agree with you that like a lot of people, because he chose to be free. We were talking about a lot of
Yeah.
times. I think they were making that choice, or the choice is being made for them because of their
Mhm.
circumstances.
Well, yeah, in Utah, there's a lot of people who live up in the mountains,
Mhm.
and they don't want to be part of society. So there's a group there that will take them food and supplies.
Yeah,
Which is nice. I mean, they
Right.
just choose to live, and it's usually youth who are having issues with like gender identity or
sure. They just don't feel like they
fit in.
belong. Right. There's times I wish I didn't live a part of society.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want a little break from that? But yeah, so they just feel like they don't belong or have a place to go. So they're up there.
And the train jumpers, I still stay in touch with them
Okay.
via Facebook and Instagram. One of them started designing jewelry, and the other ones, two were engaged, but they broke up and now they have, I think Aaron, the girl, got married and I forget what Seth's doing, but like I loved hanging out with these people
Yeah.
and they wanted me to go busking, which sounded like fun,
Oh,
like singing on
yeah.
the corner for money. But it was in Missoula, Montana, and my son was going to grad school there for his MBA, and he was like, "Mom,"
Please.
he's like, "You are
he's drawing the
not."
line. He's drawing the line. You won't eat at a dumpster. I don't want my mom singing for money on the corner. Like
He's like, "People know us here in
Right.
this
He's like-
city, and I am not
Yeah.
gonna have you out there begging."
But again, what amazing chapter would that make, or a story? You know, all the stories you would get from that alone. So there's still time. There's still time. There's still time. There might be in the future.
Someday you
Yeah.
might see me on a corner in some
Exactly.
part of this
Exactly.
country.
You'll be handing out books. You'll be like handing out books for money.
And I
I love
truly
it.
do give away.
I'm sure you do. I'm
books,
sure you
yeah.
give away more than you sell. I had a
Oh,
feeling of
yeah.
that, but you can purchase them. You can, check them out from the
Mhm.
library.
Yeah,
Um,
Barnes and Noble.
okay,
now
that's
I'm
what I-
recommending
Sure.
because something went on with Amazon.
That's what I wondered.
Distributor
Okay.
is defunct, and I don't think you can. They're only promoting the books that are on their KDP,
Oh, yeah.
their self-published site, which my other two books are. But
Okay, yeah, you want
this-
to mention the other two books,
I
at
mean,
least by name, a little bit? We can cover those. I know our feature is The Forgotten Souls,
Yeah.
but
Galisteo Nights and My Gypsy Soul. I notice I have a lot of soul.
I know soul.
But
It's very soulful.
I don't know, a lot of people don't believe in the spiritual, like mystical stuff, right? But I do. And I was having My Gypsy Soul's my favorite book on earth. I read my own book and I laugh and I cry. And I know I'm not trying to be
No.
egoistic, but I'm just like,
No, and it's
such a
personal. It's
good
personal
story.
and you're passionate too.
But I was having regression therapy. And I had known there was a Frenchman named Claude Franco that would like follow me around, a ghost, if you will. And a medium had told me about him. And then in regression therapy, my lifetime in the 1700s in France, Paris, as a gypsy girl came up. So this is the story. It's a little dark, but it's still one of hope. I mean,
yeah,
it's like,
yes.
but it's very true.
I was just going to say that,
lot of
I mean, sometimes there
research.
is sadness in truth. I mean, it's just,
Mhm.
it's, yeah, I like this. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's My Gypsy Soul.
Yeah, and Claude let me down in that lifetime, so he was following me around in every other lifetime, trying to make it up. And we finally, I had help with a healer, but we got him to cross into the light and to leave because he wasn't really serving a good purpose being stuck here. Galisteo Nights is a ghost story. It's a love triangle between a ghost, an archaeologist, and a rancher.
Okay, and that's fiction.
That's fiction.
I thought,
Well,
okay, well.
I was out west in that area and the story
Sure.
popped in my head for 3 days. It wouldn't go away.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I
Isn't
don't
that
know.
amazing?
I
Your whole
know.
path to being an author in general.
I know,
you
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like whose story it is,
Right, or it just needed to be told.
but there were accidents. There's an accident in the
Sure.
book. There were accidents that fit the description of this girl, the thing that was in my head. Like I had details in my head, but I also added a lot in there of my own stuff. Like I love Greg Braden and fractals. So there's a whole thing on fractals and Greg Braden where they're going to a theater to see his work. Also, Madame Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner. They
Okay.
started the Waldorf schools.
Oh,
And the Theosophical Society. And then there's a lot of poets in there. The ghost likes poetry.
okay.
So she likes to read Marie, I can't remember Marie's last name, but she does like poems on ordinary life, causing like bringing out the extraordinary things, just like spilling your groceries on the ground and how they roll and you pick them up and things like that. So there's a lot in there, a lot of research on pictographs, petroglyphs, and the Lamé Railroad that
Oh,
shut
yeah.
down
Mhm.
out there in Galisteo, New Mexico. There's a true story about rescuing a tortoise on horseback with my friend who lived in a
Your own
teepee.
experience.
Oh yeah,
Ah.
this was totally my, I
Uh-huh.
went out there and I met a guy from Monroe, John Wayne Haynes. I
What
kid
a
you not,
small
John
world.
Wayne.
Yeah, in the West.
I
from
didn't
Monroe.
meet him here, but I met him there. And oddly, he bought my daughter-in-law's farm when they sold it.
Okay.
How weird, like
The connections.
and he
Yeah.
dressed like the old West and lived in a teepee. And he ran a riding place. So we went on a ride and I saw this tortoise tied up. I like 200 pounds. And he's like, yeah, That's my friend's tortoise, Frankie. He escapes all the time. The newspapers write about him. They build a bigger wall. He pushed a chair over. He climbed on the chair and went over the wall. So he roped him and tied him to a tree. And when we got back, we called the owner. He looked like Che Guevara. He had a leather helmet, goggles, and a scarf, and a sidecar on an old motorcycle. And he's like, in a blanket in the sidecar. And he's like, okay, take me to him. It was an hour ride into the desert. So we were on horseback. He was on a motorcycle in the sand. We get there, he wraps Frankie up in the blanket, puts him in the sidecar, and we ride back. Well, he got stuck. We had to push him out
Oh
because the
my
tortoise
goodness,
was
what a
heavy.
story, what a
He
story.
gave us $100, so we're
Oh.
like, oh, we're gonna ride to town. So we rode to town to the saloon, tied up the horses, danced, ate. Remembered we didn't have flashlights on the way back. That was a scary
Life
experience.
lesson, life
We rode the
lesson,
horses
yeah.
back on a two-lane
dark, yeah.
highway, curvy in the dark, and semis coming at you.
Late and late, yeah.
This was just calm. I'm like,
Yeah, that seems like not much protection
but I
there.
hadn't gotten an Airbnb or anything, so he's like, well, where are you gonna stay? It was like 2 a.m. I
Oh
said,
my
I don't really
goodness.
know, in my car. And he said, nah, stay in my teepee. I won't bother you. So
Oh.
his dog and I curled up on a buffalo skin
Oh,
in the teepee.
how authentic, how
going-
wonderful. What
so
an
there's
experience.
stories-
You have so many great stories.
That's why I
Let me tell
said
ya.
I've lived 10 lives.
I love it.
and
I love it.
What
This
could
is
I be but a
amazing.
storyteller? you
I know, I
know?
love it. I love
My
everything
kids are
about
like, Mom, you're so dramatic. I'm like, it's part of who I am.
it.
I got a drama.
I've
I've
earned this.
I like telling stories and I gotta make them interesting.
I love
too.
it. I love everything about this. Yeah. So I would invite anyone to check out your book, either check it out from the library or purchase it from Barnes and Noble.
Mhm.
Check out your website, which I think is your name, right? Kelly Lee Mystery Deck. I mean, I'll maybe drop the link. I
Oh,
forgot
so
what it was
that's
called.
my counseling website.
Oh, maybe that's the one I was
have-
on. Okay.
Yeah,
never
I
mind.
have 3
probably-
websites,
Okay.
but it should be forgottensouls.com. It
Oh,
might
okay.
be-
On the book. I'll hopefully drop it in the description if we
You know, because
if we discover.
my
You're
publisher-
right. The website I went to was your counseling website. Now that you say that
Yeah.
it was not your book, so I'll hopefully drop some links in there.
Let's see, and so in the book is my old email too.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I have to update that. That is Kelly Lee Mystery, my name, 62 at gmail.com.
Uh-huh.
And
Then
we'll
your
we'll
other
find the
website
link
is
to
Kelly
the
Lee.
website.
We'll see, check the link out and see what, or check the description. We'll see what's down there.
We'll find the website for you, but
We
there is a
will.
Forgotten Souls website.
Okay.
I know on YouTube you can do the Forgotten Souls trailer. If you
Yes,
type
which
it
is
in, it'll
amazing. It's
bring up
very
the
theatrical.
trailer.
Yeah, so that's on YouTube. So
Yeah.
you can just type in Forgotten Souls
Mhm.
trailer and then it'll come up on YouTube. Okay.
And I love when people write to me if they have stories about people that are homeless.
To your email, is that okay? To your
Yeah,
Gmail?
Yeah,
Awesome.
and my publisher is always pushing me to do Forgotten Souls too.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
More Forgotten Souls, still Forgotten Souls. Aw.
because it hasn't really changed.
Yeah,
We need
yeah.
to get programs for mental health. And my idea was to have a community, like communities, not mental hospitals,
Right.
because those were scary, but communities that you can live in, like tiny houses. Maybe I think
Mhm.
this might have been
Sure.
Pastor Boone's idea too, but have a grocery store, a pharmacy, a mental health
All one
clinic
community.
for the mental
I
health.
think that was sort of her vision, right? To
Right.
be able to low income.
So they have someone on site 24/7 that lives in the community and that they can make sure they take their meds. If they don't show up to take their meds, because that's the biggest problem when they got thrown out of the institutions.
Right,
They don't go
right.
back to
Yeah.
get their meds. So
Mm.
like community mental health. So yeah, there's things that, you know, need to be done for them. And drugs are really, I mean, they're a problem, but they're not as much of a problem, I think, in the homeless population as
Mental
the
health.
mental
Well,
health
right,
and the
right.
self-medicating.
Mhm. People think, people
So,
think that, but you're right. So
yeah.
there are other factors that lead to it, but the driving problem, I think, like you say, is mental health or
Mhm.
just not getting the help they need.
Yep.
Well,
and
yeah.
that's important.
Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Anything else that you'd want to share? I just appreciate you joining me today and sharing about your book and these stories and telling their stories. It's so important.
Yeah, they were all so happy. Like, thank you for telling my
Yeah.
story. Are you going to change it? I'm like, no, whatever you
right.
tell me goes in that book. So
Yes.
if you read the book, just be prepared. Some may
Even
not make
just-
sense, but you know.
Well, we were
it's what
talking
they say.
earlier before recording when,
Mhm.
when the how nice it is when you actually see a life changed or things that are affected by
Yeah.
that, which you're probably affecting them more than you know, but but even just for them to be seen and heard, I mean, that alone
Yeah,
speaks,
validation.
yes, that alone speaks, mountains for
I'm
for the help
human,
you've
I
been
still
doing.
count,
Yes,
so.
yes. So what you're doing, amazing work. Keep it up. Can't wait for Forgotten Souls too.
Someday.
Aw.
I did try to write one on, the other issue is people coming out of the armed forces. They're usually in there for structure, and then they're turned loose and they have no one telling them what to do, no structure. And there's a lot of dependence on Adderall. I can't really speak against the government, right?
Sure.
But I'm just saying what they told me,
Right,
but then
right.
there was all this off the record stuff. So I was trying to write a book about people with PTSD because my undergrad was traumatic brain
Oh,
injury
yeah,
work. And I worked with veterans that had
which is a whole nother,
TBIs.
you could do a whole nother
Oh,
book on
yeah.
veterans.
Well, that's what I was
alone.
gonna do. It was a
Yes.
veterans book, like Forgotten Veterans, but
Yes.
none of them would give me permission to tell these stories
Yeah.
because a lot of things go on in our government
Right.
that we don't know. And we probably don't want to know.
Right. Well, and they're
So-
getting lost for a reason and they don't want to come to
Yes.
light. Right.
And
And you have to respect that
I had
too.
to scrap
Yeah.
those stories
Mhm.
because no matter what I was told, I couldn't really print it.
Mhm.
And it was going to be a really boring book. So
Um,
maybe we'll just do a follow-up to
Right, like,
this, and
where are
Try
they
to
now?
find-
Forgotten
yeah.
Souls, where are they now?
hopefully I can find them.
Well, I mean, that would be fun. That would be fun to find out too, what has
Yeah.
happened. Well, thank you again. Thanks for
Yeah,
everything today.
thank
It's
you,
been
Marcia,
such a
for having
pleasure.
me.